This is part 3 of the collaboration with these 3 cuties here. Please subscribe them and check them out, because holy shit they are amazing. The links to the other videos are in the info box and you can find them in the playlist. The next part will be the final part on Haikyuu Matcha's channel. Enjoy the chaos. Snow is something special. It is so pure, white, soothing. When observed from a distance it covers the earth like a white blanket, but once the flakes are viewed up close, beautiful crystals can be seen. It is said that if you confess your feelings to your great love when the first snow falls and enchants the world in its white powder, you will stay together forever. It was winter, and the first snowfall was soon to come. SakuAtsu blinked a few times to process what Atsumu just asked him. It was early in the morning, after all, and Kyumi was still definitely not a morning person. Wanna hit some sets? How long has it been now? 4 years? Yeah, SakuAtsu hadn't seen Atsumu in 4 damn years by now. The last time was when they were both still in high school, when they were in their 3rd and final years. After that, he went off to college and Atsumu, well, he just disappeared off the face of the earth. And after all the time that has passed, that familiar feeling still came rushing over him like a blizzard. He only had to hear his laughter and it was there again. Look into his eyes and it was there again. Feel his closeness and, shit, it was there again. SakuAtsu gulped as he put his phone aside and hesitantly walked towards the blonde. Their eyes met, not detaching from each other for a second. SakuAtsu's heart raced. He just hoped the heat on his face didn't show and his cheeks weren't nearly as red as he feared them to be. Wishful thinking. SakuAtsu blushed like hell. And Atsumu couldn't help but bite the inside of his cheek to suppress an abashed smile. Blushing Omi was still his favorite sight. SakuAtsu took a ball from the ball cart and pressed it against his hands before bouncing it on the ground a few times. He turned his gaze back to Atsumu and grinned when he noticed his shit-eating grin. I bet you can't keep up with me anymore. Atsumu's eyes widened for a split second, still locked with SakuAtsu's, before placing a hand on his hip and his grin widened. Less thinking, more acting, Omi. And SakuAtsu's smirk turned into something mischievous as he prepared to toss to Atsumu. It was just like back then. Everything was like it was back then. Atsumu's sets couldn't have been any better. Heck, they hadn't played together in over 4 years, and he knew instantly how SakuAtsu needed the ball. It was insane. Atsumu flashed a smile as he sent the ball high into the air. He knew the set was perfect, and his eyes drifted to SakuAtsu, who in one smooth motion smashed the volleyball to the other side of the net. Atsumu's eyes widened as he watched the ball smack to the ground. SakuAtsu's hits were even more powerful than he was used to back in training camp. He whistled and turned to the curly head with a wide smile. Omi, shit, you got pretty damn good. SakuAtsu just looked at Atsumu in astonishment. I'm really glad to have you on our team. And now he blushed even more, heat sprouting in his cheeks, his heart beating fast, beating hard. After all these years, the blonde still captivated him. After all these years, the feelings for this idiot of a setter were still as strong, maybe even stronger than ever before. Kyumi took a deep breath before giving Atsumu a small but wholehearted smile back. I'm glad to finally play with you again, Achu. Achu. It's clearly been a while, Omi. The day went by very quickly. SakuAtsu was introduced to the team and wow, they were chaotic, to say the least. There was Bakuto. SakuAtsu knew him from inter-high, but meeting him in person, being on a team with him was another experience in itself. Hinata was at least as loud as Bakuto. SakuAtsu could remember him too well. This idiot had caught a fever at his first inter-high tournament because he had neglected his health. SakuAtsu could still roll his eyes at that memory. He didn't understand how anyone could be so careless with his health. Next, there would be Inunaki, the libero. SakuAtsu wasn't quite sure about him. He was older than him, but somehow there was something sadistic about him. As if he was just waiting for the right time to smash insults into your face. Thinking about it, he was quite a bit like SakuAtsu, but more outgoing. SakuAtsu liked him. But his favorites were Mian, their captain, Buns and Thomas. They, too, were older than him and much more mature than the rest of the 𝒉𝒂𝒏𝒌𝒔 squad. They honestly made it easy for him to fit in and feel comfortable right away. Last but not least, however, there was this very special blonde setter. If SakuAtsu had known beforehand that he would meet 𝒕𝒍�𝒏𝒈 here again, he probably wouldn't have applied for the 𝒕𝒍�𝒏𝒌𔔐. But he was even happier to see him now. Atsumu was amazing. He was already back then, but now he's gotten so much better. SakuAtsu even dared to say he was the best. Atsumu was still like he used to be back then, that annoying brat who had to comment on everything and everyone. That clingy idiot who wouldn't leave you alone until he thought it was enough, which was never the case with SakuAtsu. It was a wonder he ever got rid of him. Atsumu was still this incredibly attractive man that SakuAtsu Kyumi lost his heart to. No. He was even more handsome than ever before. What are you scowling at, Omi? Atsumu handed him a water bottle and dropped down on the bench next to SakuAtsu, bumping their shoulders and knees together and getting closer to him than SakuAtsu would have ever allowed anyone else. Atsumu was special, after all. I don't scowl. You look like you wanna kill someone, and you were pouting. SakuAtsu looked at the blonde startled and drew his eyebrows even further together by now. Atsumu chuckled. See, scowling. So, what's up? Heck. How was SakuAtsu supposed to tell him what was going on? How was he supposed to tell him that he was jealous of Bakuto and Hinata, who hung around him 24/7, touching him incessantly, practically absorbing his closeness? SakuAtsu was jealous. Having been with the 𝒕𝒍�𝒏𝒌𔔐 for a few weeks now, he too wanted more and more of Atsumu, and most of all, he didn't want to share him. He wanted to have his setter for himself. Atsumu chuckled. You will just never change, Omi, eh? You would always rather make that cute pouty face when something bothers you instead of just addressing it. Atsumu said with a slight smile on his lips as he bumped his shoulder against Kyumi's briefly before taking a sip from his water bottle and looking at the spiker out of the corner of his eye. SakuAtsu glanced back at Atsumu out of the corner of his eye and scoffed. I never make a pouty face. He grumbled, his hands now tucked into his 𝒕𝒍�𝒏𝒌𔔐 jacket and his eyes lowered to the ground to his shoes. He had to suppress a blush on his cheeks since Atsumu had actually called him cute. I don't believe in never. Atsumu said, his grin now a little wider, and set the water bottle aside. His gaze was fixed on SakuAtsu, who caught the blonde's flaming look. And I don't believe in always. SakuAtsu countered, whose scowl now slowly disappeared, the longer he looked into the beaming face of the blonde beauty in front of him. Well, opposites attract. Atsumu said, wearing a smug grin. Never. Kyumi countered again, one eyebrow raised. Always. The blonde finished, smirking, and Kyumi blushed again. Hard. He tore his gaze away from him and bit his lips, trying to ignore the flutter in his chest and remove the heat from his face. Atsumu was still as charming as ever. SakuAtsu stood up and took off his jacket, throwing it over the bench and then rubbing his hands together in a quick motion to warm himself up again. The days are getting colder now, huh? Guess it's supposed to snow soon. Yeah, cold? SakuAtsu shrugged while stopping for a brief moment to get his hands warm again through the friction. He looked at the blonde perplexed as he suddenly stood up as well and took Kyumi's hands in his palms, the intangible warmth emanating from Atsumu immediately coursing through SakuAtsu's body. Kyumi's eyes were wide open, but this time it was Atsumu who blushed softly. Funny how my lips are suddenly cold too, SakuAtsu thought, not daring to say it out loud. Better? Why yeah. Thanks. I have to keep an eye on my favorite spiker, don't I, Omi? Atsumu winked and flashed him a smile. This man was really more than confident, and he obviously didn't care at all how much his own cheeks were tinted in red at that moment. He looked at SakuAtsu with wide eyes, gazing at him and looking like he was waiting for something, and Kyumi frowned, swallowing. Stop looking at me like that, Achu. SakuAtsu's blush on his cheeks intensified more and more until he tore his hands off the blonde and turned his face away from him, hiding his flattery. He cleared his throat before addressing Atsumu. What? Atsumu grinned, still having his gaze fixed on SakuAtsu. He walked up to Kyumi and placed his face right in front of SakuAtsu's, making the spiker flinch because of the sudden proximity, and looked at Atsumu with wide startled eyes. Atsumu just laughed. Aren't you going to say it back? SakuAtsu blinked a few times. He had no clue what Atsumu wanted him to say. Don't say what back? Oh, and that made Atsumu pout. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at Sakusa in a huff. That I'm your favorite setter. You're not, replied Sakusa deadpanned, and Atsumu gasped. Omi. How can you say that? But I am your favorite setter. Again. You are not. Fight me, you ceramic bitch. Sakusa raised an eyebrow and turned away from him, walking to the ball cart where the others were already waiting. Of course, Atsumu was just messing with him. He wouldn't seriously feel the same way about him as Sakusa still did about the blonde, would he? How much of a chance was there that Atsumu ever had a crush on Sakusa in the first place? He would have let him know then, after all, if he had cared just a little bit. But Atsumu just disappeared. Are you telling me you seriously have another favorite setter, Omi? Yes. Sakusa lied bluntly. He didn't care that Atsumu was clinging to him like a baby. He was kind of used to it from back then. From the time at training camp and everything that came after. Nasty, Omi. Why isn't it me? The blonde setter wouldn't let go of him, continuing to bug him until it burst out of Sakusa. How could my favorite setter just leave me like that? And Sakusa's expression was perhaps a bit more scowling and serious than he really wanted it to be. Atsumu had just been goofing around. Sakusa knew that too. But something about it had hit him, had opened old wounds, because how could he? How could he rush into Sakusa's life like that and then vanish in a blink of an eye? It wasn't fair. I wouldn't just leave you like that, Omi. Atsumu said, addressing Sakusa with a serious expression on his face. Flashback. Text messages between Kyo face with medical mask. And Tsumu sparkles. I wouldn't just leave you like that, Omi. It would have been better that way, Achu. You didn't have to make such a drama when you got on the train. No one really needed that. Almost on the wrong train, by the way. Stoop. And we both know you would have been mad at me if I hadn't seen you off appropriately. Why did you even come? Omi. It was you who invited me to Tokyo. Kyumi sneered and blushed. Ever since Atsumu accidentally got on the wrong train after training camp in their second year and spent a few days at Sakusa's house due to the snowstorm, he hadn't stopped texting him incessantly. Sakusa pretended to be annoyed, but in truth he almost missed it when Atsumu wouldn't write to him every 5 minutes. Of course, he acted like he couldn't stand Atsumu's clinginess, but deep down, he loved it. It was obvious, and somehow Atsumu knew it too. This between them had been going on for a while now. Since the last training camp, whatever this was between them grew more and more. They were actually becoming something like friends, and if it was up to Sakusa's heart, things would get much farther. He liked Atsumu, he really did. But would he ever tell him? No. At least not yet. Atsumu was with Sakusa over the weekend. He had suggested if they wanted to play volleyball together with Komori, try out some new things, and of course the blonde had to say yes. There was a certain reason why he was pestering Sakusa non-stop. Miss you already, Omi. Whatever. Surprised and dismayed face. You better miss me back. Write something like OMG Tsumu, me too. I can't wait till you get back. First of all, Tsumu. Since when did I start calling you that? Secondly, I couldn't wait for you to leave. You're totally lying. I'm not. Whatever helps you sleep at night. Oh, I'm enjoying my train ride, by the way, Omi. I didn't want to know. Of course you did. Shut up. Monday 9:48 AM. 3.5 months until SakuAtsu's last inter-high tournament. Omi. What are you doing? Class. Oh, me too. Omi. Here's a random thought. What if you woke up one day and you were hot? I don't know, I'd probably open the window or something. 𝒍𝒊𝒏𝒌𝒔. I can't breathe. I don't know, you should probably open a window or something. Cries. Wednesday 11:26 PM. 3.5 months until SakuAtsu's last inter-high tournament. Omi. Omi. You there? No. Gosh, I was so worried. I was only gone for 5 minutes. Too damn long. Anyways. A mosquito tried to bite me and I slapped it and killed it. Wow. Good night. No wait. Because. I started thinking. Like it was just trying to get food. What if I went to the fridge and it just slammed the door shut and snapped my neck? How would I feel? Dead probably. Like the mosquito. Omi. Sleep. It'd be worth it if it was for the slightest piece of fatty tuna though. Thursday 3:12 p.m. 3.5 months until SakuAtsu's last inter-high tournament. I miss hanging out with you. I don't. You do. You know I would die for you, Omi. Yesterday you said you'd die for the slightest piece of fatty tuna, so I don't feel that special. I'd live for you. Die. Sunday 1:39 a.m. 3.5 months until SakuAtsu's last inter-high tournament. Omi. I swear, it's in the middle of the night. If this is going to be a stupid thought, I'm blocking you. It's not, I promise. Raised hand. I was just thinking. What rock group has 4 men that don't sing? Oh my god. Do I even want to know? What is it called? Mount Rushmore. Get out. I couldn't stop. This contact is no longer available. Omi no. Thursday 5:54 p.m. 3.5 months until SakuAtsu's last inter-high tournament. Peaches. Lemons. Rice. Tuna. What the fuck? What is this? Weird pet names? OMG, you unblocked me. Oh, don't be too happy. I'll repay you. Huh? Unsatisfying thoughts coming in. 3, 2, 1. Frightened blondie. You have never seen your own face, only reflections and pictures. Something is always touching you. You can always see your nose. Your tongue never sits comfortably in your mouth. OMG. Omi. Stop. You will never feel something exactly the same way someone else does. Omi. You can't imagine a new color. You ruined my life. You're welcome. Saturday 9:37 p.m. 3.5 months until SakuAtsu's last inter-high tournament. I miss you. Sakusa looked at his screen, startled, and repeated the 3 little words in his head. Atsumu couldn't possibly have meant him, could he? You there, Omi? I'm here. Kyumi frowned. His hands were slightly shaking, a lump spread in his throat. He didn't know if Atsumu was just messing with him again or if he was serious. In fact, no matter what it was, Kyumi really felt that way too, so he added to his reply. I miss you too. I wanna come over. It's been so long since we last saw each other. I hate this long distance. Why can't Tokyo be a second away from me? And Kyumi felt every word the setter wrote to him. His tiny heart was beating fast and strong, the butterflies in his stomach were set in turmoil. Sakusa would give anything to see Atsumu right now, but he couldn't. Hyogo was just too far away from him. Just a few more months Atsu, and then I'll see you at inter-high. Pain. That's too damn long, Omi. Hey, what if I come visit you tomorrow? I'm this close to buying a train ticket. Atsumu. Tomorrow is Sunday and the train ride from your place to Tokyo takes 9 hours. Don't do that. But. No. I could call in sick for Monday and just return then. I could buy a train ticket right now. Oh my god, Omi, then we could spend the whole day together tomorrow. So, what do you think? Good idea, right? Whatever floats your Titanic. The Titanic sank, Omi. Just like your IQ did when you came up with that idea. Omi. So rude. Be nice to me. I am nice. You're not. You're insulting me. It's not an insult if it's true. Capital U. Capital D. E. Sakusa snorted. I wanna see you, Omi. Well, then call me. Scene. It didn't take a second for Atsumu's number to appear on Sakusa's screen. The spiker chuckled before accepting the call and turning on his front camera. What he saw was the wide, beaming grin of the boy for whom he had perhaps lost his heart a little too much. The blonde strands were sticking out in all directions and his eyes were just barely open. Sakusa was lying on his stomach in his bed, propping himself up on his elbows so he could look into his phone, the pillow squashed underneath him. Kyumi couldn't help but blush slightly and giggle. You look tired, Atsu. HMPH, I'm not. Sakusa could see that he was about to fall asleep. He raised his eyebrow and looked at him in disbelief. And that's how you were planning to go to Tokyo? You definitely would have gotten on the wrong train again. And Atsumu groaned. Stoop. All that fate was screaming for is that it wanted to send me to you and that I definitely shouldn't go home again. Oh, and that colored Kayumi's cheeks even redder. Thank God it was already dark. Atsumu smiled. Can't wait to see you at Inter High, Omi. SakuSA returned the faint smile and immediately sank back into the golden eyes of his favorite blonde setter. I'm looking forward to it too, Atsu. Never in his life did SakuSA think he could lose himself so much in one person. He couldn't stand Atsumu in the beginning. He was loud, annoying, too clingy, and now it is exactly these things that SakuSA missed so much. Do you know what you're gonna do once you graduate from high school? The question was unexpected. SakuSA hummed, glancing at the ceiling for a moment before his gaze fell back on Atsumu. He nodded. College. I want to make sure mum has it good. That put a soft smile on Atsumu's lips. He loved how caring SakuSA was. He loved that he was one of the few who got to see that side of SakuSA. What about you? Something in SakuSA was afraid to utter that question aloud. What if they parted ways for good after high school? SakuSA was absolutely not ready for that. I'll go pro, of course. Atsumu said with a wide sleepy grin on his face. Will you return to volleyball after college? Atsumu asked curiously. A hint of unease laced his voice and SakuSA's eyes widened for a split second. He loved volleyball. Actually, it was out of the question for him to take up a professional career after college as well. He smiled, sank into his pillow and looked dreamily at Atsumu. He nodded, the corners of his mouth moving upward as he saw how pleased Atsumu was with the answer. Yes, definitely. Imagine if we played on the same team, Omi. And SakuSA's heart leapt at that thought. I would really like that. A few days passed and the misfortune could not have hit SakuSA more. Not only was Komori, his only mental support, ill for some time due to a contagious and pesky disease. No, it also had to happen that someone rammed into SakuSA at the station and he dropped his phone to the ground because of the incident. The screen was cracked. It couldn't be turned on anymore. His phone was ruined. Shit. He'd only had the phone for a few weeks and he couldn't bother his mother with the fact that he needed another one already. SakuSA rolled his eyes and groaned. This fucking stranger hadn't even apologized properly yet. God, SakuSA hated crowds. Well, I'll just have to live without a phone for now. And that wouldn't really be a problem, if it weren't for that certain blondie from whom he expected a message every 10 seconds. He couldn't even let him know what had happened, because he didn't know his number by heart and Komori called in being sick. SakuSA sighed. This day was terrible. And so were the next days, weeks, months. Even when Komori was well again and SakuSA tried to contact Atsumu with his cousin's phone, he couldn't reach him. SakuSA frowned. Unavailable. Huh. Strange. Maybe he has a new number? You should ask him when you see each other again. It won't be long until Inter High. That was true. But he missed Atsumu so much that it hurt. Inter High was coming up and SakuSA knew he would finally confess to Atsumu, tell him how he felt about him. He had to do it then and there, or else he never would have done it. So he prepared himself morally and mentally, looking forward to finally, seeing Atsumu again after 3 months of silence, only to realize. What do you mean they're not here? SakuSA scowled. An uneasy feeling spread through his gut. Oh, you didn't know? The twins recently moved to Norway. Some Inarizaki dude, SakuSA believed his name was Suna, answered him and SakuSA stood frozen in place. They moved away. To Norway. That was a freaking joke, right? His eyes roamed over each player, but it was true. He couldn't spot a blonde boy. He couldn't spot any twins. SakuSA's heart beat faster and faster. He swallowed, forcing down the lump in his throat as he walked away from them again. He felt a few tears welling up in his eyes and he blinked them away. SakuSA actually wanted to confess to Atsumu. But Atsumu was indeed gone. He had left him just like that. Atsumu looked SakuSA in the eyes, startled, and sensed something was wrong. He frowned and waited for SakuSA to explain what he meant. Inter High. Our last year in high school. You were never there, Atsu. Atsumu's eyes widened. His heart stumbled. He opened his mouth, but the words didn't pass his lips. He glanced nervously at the ground before turning his gaze back to SakuAtsu, full of guilt and regret. SakuAtsu's eyebrows drew together at that sight. I couldn't. He stuttered. Samu was injured and we had to leave. I could never have come. SakuAtsu raised an eyebrow and looked at Atsumu in confusion. He didn't understand a word he was saying. Atsumu sighed and ran his hand through his hair. Samu had serious heart issues and we had to see a specialist in Norway. What? SakuAtsu looked at Atsumu in shock. He swallowed. You stopped texting me at some point, Omi. I thought you had finally had enough of me, so I didn't want to bug you anymore. I also thought I'd see you again at Inter High, until that happened with Samu. Atsumu looked nervously at the ground again and frowned. When Mum and Dad told us then that we were moving, everything went faster than we expected. We were busy packing and then I actually managed to break my phone. You too? Atsumu's gaze snapped up to SakuAtsu. He looked at him frowning. What do you mean, me too? I stopped writing to you because my phone was broken. I didn't have a chance to reach you. He explained to Atsumu what happened then and Atsumu laughed in despair, shaking his head and looking at SakuAtsu with pity. I just bought a new phone again in Norway and my forgetful self couldn't remember any of my passwords on my social media channels, so I had to start over. I've hadn't regained so many followers, I had no idea if you or Komori were among them. The cons of being a freaking famous setter. I actually wanted to visit you before we left, I even bought a train ticket but... Atsumu fell silent, looking down at the ground in embarrassment, and SakuAtsu's heart slipped into the pit of his stomach. No. Don't say. Wrong train, Omi. And SakuAtsu mentally facepalmed himself. Fate is an asshole. And Atsumu is an idiot. But so is SakuAtsu. How is Osamu? He's doing better. He had to quit volleyball, so he took up cooking. He has his own restaurant now. 𝒍𝒊𝒏𝒌𝒔. We should stop by together sometime, Omi. Atsumu replied, his smile slowly returning to his face by now. We should. SakuAtsu replied, a soft smile returning to his lips as well. Everything was a huge misunderstanding and SakuAtsu couldn't have felt any more shabby. If only he had never ignored Atsumu on the social media channels, he could have saved himself so much grief. But he shouldn't care about that anymore. What mattered was that he was with Atsumu right now. Atsumu was here and SakuAtsu couldn't have been any happier. SakuAtsu and Atsumu caught up on some of the things they had missed since their sudden loss of contact and God, SakuAtsu was so glad to finally have him back in his life. Atsumu did him so much good. He knew exactly why he fell in love with him back then and he knew just as well why his feelings for him were still as strong today as they were back then. He had to tell him this time. He had to tell him what he felt for him before it was too late again. It was then when SakuAtsu thought about what his grandmother once told him. If you confess your love to the person you want at the first snowfall, you will stay together forever. Kiyumi was 5 at that time and had no clue what the dear old woman actually wanted from him. Today, he understood. It was a Sunday afternoon and Atsumu had gone back to his parents for the weekend. He was on the train ride back to Osaka when he had the urge to call Kiyumi. Atsumu. Bad timing? SakuAtsu blushed and pressed his lips together. He would drop everything for Atsumu. Of course it was never bad timing. No, it's good. You're heading back already? Yeah. Hey, I wanna see ya, Omi. SakuAtsu blushed even more and shook his head with a smile. He turned on the front camera and saw the incredibly attractive blonde setter in front of him, saw how he was in the obviously moving train. So, you never told me what you did after high school. Oh, and by the way, I'm really enjoying my train ride, Omi. Shut up. Next part will be on Haikyuu Matcha's channel, so make sure you'll check them out to watch the last vid. Thank you all for collaborating. This was so much fun. All links are in the info box.